Kind of slow. I'm gonna do another one of those social study, psychology, talking to a wall kind of video as I have been indulging, drowning deeper into delusion about the point of living anymore, I guess. I want to talk about more and realize that maybe there aren't good people in this world. Maybe people are just capable of doing good things. No real good people. Most people are actually just evil. Just sometimes people do good things, right? And when I talk about being truly good, truly being kind to others, I've talked about, and like I've talked about in those videos, like the when I realized being cool wasn't cool. I talk about being kind when it doesn't benefit you, being kind when you get no clout for it, when it actually, is a burden to you, it's an inconvenience to you. That feels like true kindness to me, right? And I realize most people aren't like that. And it's actually weird, right? Even that Japan story, I've been to Japan multiple times, and at first the fake kindness didn't bother me. And in a way, it's still refreshing, even when it was this last time living in Japan. But the fake kindness did kind of start to bother me this last time, right? And when I talk about fake kindness, real kindness is if you are kind to somebody, if it inconveniences you, if it doesn't benefit you. And when you see little things in Japan, like people don't even open doors for people, right? Are you really that inconvenienced that you don't open doors for people, right? Again, going back, talking about, that I made that video long ago, realizing being cool is not cool, right? You know what I mean? I had that ideal growing up, since I grew up a nerd, you know what I mean? And I had a bad life growing up, and I guess I still have a bad life, but, I wanted to be cool, and I thought the hero was the guy who does good things, even if it inconveniences him. And, I've talked about, most people will never experience that, I'm sure. Hanging out with homeless people in the bathroom, no one knows you're doing that. You get nothing for it. Most people that do nice things, they do it and then they'll talk about it, or they get some kind of clout for it, or some shit like that. Like, no one knew I was doing that kind of shit. Talking to other sick people, in the hospital that might not know that I'm sick, just talking to random people on the internet. And for sure, from a certain perspective, I was able to do it to such an extent that I was, because of my health problems, because I was not really doing much else, because I had so much free time to inconvenience myself, so to speak, right? I talked about when I was at the most popular in my life, when most of my pictures were being stolen at the most, there was a period of like 4 months where I basically couldn't walk, right? But even, so I was answering, I probably answered thousands and thousands of messages, I'm sure. Had legitimate, probably, at least small conversations with people, right? Not saying I've talked to just, I've talked to 1,000 different people. I've probably legitimately had at least small conversations with thousands of people, it feels like, right? And, you have conversations with people that don't benefit you. You don't get anything out of it. I've talked to, I remember I was talking to this one girl, man, hours, man. She's telling me how she's going to cry or kill herself and all this kind of stuff. She was explaining to me exactly how she's going to do it. We talked for hours and all this kind of stuff, right? And that's not one of those things that like, oh, hey, I'm just talking to the hot girl because I secretly want to fuck her. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm talking to people that there's no social gain for me. I just thought that I'm doing the right thing. This is the morally right thing to do. And then you answer thousands of messages and, and of course in those thousands of messages, there's tons of haters. I've had weird stalkers all over, just hearing about what a terrible person you are, and they have no idea what you're going through. Or maybe they're even so insane that maybe they do stalk you, like so many people in the video game community, and they think it's fake. They think it's fake that you've been dying and all this kind of crap, right? And it's like, man, you guys would never do this stuff that I've done, right? And you see the people that consider themselves nice. You know, you see people in America, all the holier than thou, overly radical LGBTQ, social justice, where it's in your fucking face everywhere here in America, dude, right? And like clockwork, it's always the most, the more holier than thou people are always, quotation marks, always the worst people. They're not that nice. And, as I travel, even now, answering messages from people all over, I'm constantly just like, man, maybe good people just don't exist in this world. Maybe sometimes people only just decide to do something nice. People are capable of doing something nice. But so many times they only do that nice thing because it's convenient for them to do it. Maybe they want something from somebody. They like I said, I give examples of, I've gone around talking to people, they're going to die. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to fuck them. I don't want to fuck these homeless people while I'm hanging out with them in the bathroom. You know, I get nothing from that. I just thought that I'm making the world a better place. And maybe the world doesn't even deserve that. So many times I can tell you, even, I've talked about before, you meet a lot of other sick people. And there was a time that I used to try to meet other sick people, so to speak. And I said so many times that you find that these other people with health problems, they're in a competition to see who is the sickest with each other. And sometimes they don't know that you're sick at first either. And then, of course, I say it's like clockwork too. Man, then you get into these social interactions where you talk to someone and they have this sort of face value, even if it's not a sick person, just talking to people, whatever. At face value, maybe they look at you and they're like, oh, you must be a man whore, you must be a terrible person. And then if they find out that you're actually sick, it even gets worse because then they feel guilty. Like, oh my God, this person is actually incredible, so to speak. He's done things even if it's inconvenience to him, like I'm talking about. Now I have to maybe even think worse of him because I need a coping mechanism to make sure that I'm not a bad person for actually thinking about this person. So they'll even make the lie even bigger. Originally, maybe they thought, oh, this person, maybe, he's not that good of a person. Or then they found out you're sick and it's like, whoa, that's sort of like, boom, that flush of emotions. Like, oh my God, shit, am I a shitty person? I feel guilty. I didn't know this person was going through this. Well, maybe I'll just I'll make the lie even bigger that they're terrible as a coping mechanism. It doesn't matter what country I've been to, how many different people from different cultures I've met. I just don't meet legitimately nice people, it seems. Answering messages from people and just, again, becoming more and more deluded with the point of living. Sometimes I think I probably would have killed myself already if I actually was religious, maybe, right? Because I feel like killing yourself, I feel like there's that sort of conundrum of you're not supposed to kill yourself if you're religious, you know what I mean? But then you also have these religious people like, oh, God will forgive me and there's something else waiting for me. I always feel like, I wonder what, I guess you might not know, right? I always feel like I wonder what the status of people who actually kill themselves that actually aren't religious, because I always feel like there's no point in doing that because there's nothing waiting for me. I just have to keep living this hell, so to speak, of pointlessness throughout life. I've talked about before, depending on your perspective, maybe the awesomest thing and the worst thing, the more people you talk to throughout the world, the double-edged sword, glass is half full, glass is half empty. You're like, wow, we're all the same. We all have the same emotions, right? The same potential feelings. But then at the same time, you realize, like, man, we're all the same. Is anybody really that unique? Doesn't matter what religion, Muslim, Christian, so many people fucking, like I said, the LGBTQ at this fucking point is a fucking religion. So many holier than thou people, always the most judgmental. People talking about how nice they are, and it's like, man, I just don't see the kindness. I only see kindness if it's convenient. And part of me tries to think like, man, would I be the kind of, and the weirdest thing is I always say like when I think about my flaws, I used to think that my flaw as a person was that, I can be a selfish person. I can be a bitter person. Those are flaws, right? But then as I've met people, as I've gone throughout my life, I'm like, man, I'm not as fucking selfish as I thought I was compared to other people. And when I think about the bitterness of me, I'm like, my bitterness is pretty understandable, to be honest. It's like kind of like hard to even hate on myself for it, right? I mean, even I've said like, can you like some of that, even that cliche thing, imagine so many people, there's that story like, oh, you hear you're going to die, so you got to go apologize to people, whatever. When I've had my life or death stuff, like people have no idea how sick I've been. I've always been like an extreme example is imagine you're so sick you can't even fucking masturbate anymore. You are just that fucking out of it, right? You're like, I don't even know if I'll ever masturbate again. That's how fucked up you are, dude, right? And I never had those thoughts of like, man, I better apologize to something or someone. It's like, man, I lived such a morally just life, trying to be the coolest person I can be. Because I thought that was the ideal. And I realized the ideal, even living your life like that, people think you have like an ulterior motive. And I guess the only ulterior motive is just maybe that's selfish. Just trying to be a nice, maybe that's a perspective that maybe I'm just nice because I think it's the right thing to do. Right? The benefit for me is I think that I did the right thing. And maybe that's a difference between a lot of, maybe that's, a time when being selfish, I guess if you can call it that, is good because so many times, especially you talk to, again, religious people, and you're like, man, you hear the reasons that they're good, why they do this. And it's like, oh, well, God would want me to do this. God would want me to do this. And it's like, well, if you're only doing it because God wants you to do it because you think you will be punished, it's not really congruent with yourself. So it's no wonder that when we start having more honest conversations, maybe you're just not a good person deep down. Whereas me, when I think about it, there's no fear of God punishing me. You know what I mean? I've done everything I've done because of me, because I've felt that it was the right thing to do. I guess the fear, and like I said, as years have gone on, more realization is that trying to be that ideal human being makes you disingenuous. It makes you seem almost too perfect in a way. And so you must have an ulterior motive, kind of like the idea that, honest to a fault, or when people are just terrible people, maybe, oh, well, he must be terrible because he has a reason to be terrible. And a lot of people's reasons for being terrible, they're not that amazing in the grand scheme of things. And I'm not saying that I've never had anything good happen to me because of being nice, so to speak. I've had people that have donated to the channel, sometimes quite a bit, which is, I'm appreciative. And I've even told that story that, that one girl that is, man, she's I feel like she's probably donated, man, who knows, $7,000 worth of fragrances to me, which is, I'm very appreciative of that, right? Unfortunately, my smell, I can't smell as well as I used to be able to, but it's still cool. But, I even met her just from, like I said, it's actually a good example. People don't realize how many thousands and thousands of messages that I answer all the time, conversations that I've had throughout the years with people. Excuse me. And she's just another person that I've randomly talked to, randomly from months on end, just randomly answering messages, thinking I'm doing the right thing. If someone wants to talk to me I generally try to give them a little bit of time, you know. I think that's, you know, I'm it's not a burden for me to try to answer people when I can, you know, generally speaking, you know. As the years have gone on, I've been more and more reluctant to, unfortunately. But even that situation was her. I was talking to her for months, and then it just kind of came out. She's like, "Oh, well, you know, I've watched your YouTube. I've seen that you've had problems, and you know what? I guess you are a good guy. I want to help you out, right?" And so, you know, she's done that, and I'm appreciative of that. So, I mean, there are some good things that from being the way that I am, but I think just more and more, you know, constantly seeing the way that people treat people, the way that people have treated me. You know, it's crazy. I still answer messages, people automatically assuming the worst about me right when I meet them, but they're a good person, apparently. You know, and it's just like, man, is no one good anymore? Maybe people are only nice to people because, like, oh, I like this person at this time, so I am capable of being kind, so I will be kind to them. No, but that's not like a real kindness. That's not like a real goodness, I guess. I don't know. Again, just becoming disillusioned more and more with the way life is and people interactions. There's just no point. It makes me think that, yeah, I should just use people too. What's the point? No one cares about anybody, you know? True kindness, that's like rare. Being kind if it's convenient for you, that's not impressive. Anyone can do that. I don't know. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Futility, futileness, I don't know, of life, I guess. You know, I've always said too, that was one of the scariest things that, you know, even when my pictures were being stolen so much, you know, back in the day, and I was just talking to, you know, so many people, different conversations all over, and I'm like, man, I even felt the fear in me. I'm like, man, I feel like the scary thing is I'm going to see that everyone's the same. The more I travel, the more people I meet, there's not going to be any realization that, man, life is worth living. You know what I mean? It's like everyone's really just the same. We just use each other sometimes, and sometimes it's convenient to be nice to people. But true kindness, if it inconveniences you, who does that? That's weird, right? You know, I don't know. It's just crazy. I just answer so many messages, randomly answering messages from crazy people. Randomly, one minute a person likes you, the next person the minute they hate you, and I just think, man, these people, what is going on in their life, dude? You know what I mean? Again, more delusion, more don't feel like life has a purpose anymore, I guess. Remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, comment, share, support the channel. In the end.